I thought Carson Beck is going to be extremely interesting as well. We did discuss this briefly because how could we not discuss this briefly when we talked about Jeremiah for 20 hours already combined? So when we talk about Carson Beck, I think this situation is almost like very delicate, but I see at the same time Carson Beck coming in for this Cardinals team very early. We talk about it with this 2027 draft class, how great the quarterbacks are going to be in this 2027 draft class, how everybody's waiting for this class at all positions. It almost seems like we do this every year. Like this year, it seems to really be the year if you have these picks. These are the picks people are waiting for the last 2 years. So with Carson Beck, them drafting him in the top of the third round with enough capital to say, hey, we're going to give this guy a realistic shot. And then you look at Carson Beck at the same time and his college football career, him being a long-term college football quarterback and 2 pro-style offenses that he found success in both of them. This is a guy that can come in pretty early. This is a guy you look at like a Jaden Daniels, like a Bo Nix, of guys with long-term experience in the NFL that should theoretically translate early. Obviously, those guys were drafted a lot higher. But again, Carson Beck was looked at one point to be a first overall pick, a first-round pick. No doubt the talent and the intangibles are there. Now, for the Cardinals, you get in this weird spot. You build this offense to be a really good offense, and you don't have a quarterback to plop it into. For the Cardinals, they're going to be in this very weird spot to figure out at what point do we see if Carson Beck can be our quarterback of the future before we could possibly dive into this 2027 draft class. Because there's a very good chance, knowing this Cardinals roster, again, I don't know where their ceiling is. It could very well be the first overall pick, that they could be a top-end pick in this draft class. So they're going to have to put Carson Beck in at a pivotal point where it gives him enough runway to show he's the guy, or we got to go in the 2027 draft class. So this pick is like almost a little odd to me, and I do think it's one of those picks. Jacoby Brissett wants more money. They haven't given it to him yet. I really don't think they should, and I think Carson Beck should come in fairly early, not only because of them needing to know if they got to dip in the 2027 draft class or not, because it's so special. They got to figure out they can do it because this guy was a guy that has more experience in college football than almost any other quarterback that has came out with the 2 offenses and everything. So that is like very interesting to me. I want to know, like, again, obviously your thoughts on it, and at the same time, when would you like to see Carson Beck?
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, and we've mentioned it, is the amount of football that he played in college. I think that is a huge advantage for him, and playing in a lot of big games in his college career, and most recently played in the national championship game against Indiana. And it is going to be a true test for him when he does step in because of the division that he's going to be playing in. You know, with Seattle's defense, the Rams defense are going to be going up against, and the 49ers defense, obviously, injuries kind of, made their defense suffer, but, you're going to have Bosa back and Fred Warner back, I'm assuming. So you're going to have that. And, those teams also have high-powered offenses as well. So it is going to be tough. He is going to get brought in at some point. The Cardinals season is it's not going to go well. They aren't going to win a lot of games, but also because, again, the division you're playing in, and, Jacoby Brissett, although I think he, is a good backup to have, Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals are not going to win a lot of games. And, Carson Beck, offensively, he's stepping into, a situation where you're going to have a few good pass catchers. You're going to have a top pick in Jeremiah Love coming out of the backfield where, you could find some success there. So I think he will get put in early. I would say it could be as early as, 2-3 games into the season he's brought in. I mean, maybe he wins the job out of camp. He performs well in preseason and they think, hey, you know what? Let's see what we have, because, next year there's going to be a deeper class that we could go in and draft. And the Cardinals kind of were in a similar situation when they drafted Josh Rosen, and then they immediately were like, all right, we're bailing on this and going. They had a chance to get Kyler Murray, which they did, but now obviously Kyler Murray is now with the Vikings, so it didn't really work out. So I kind of see that playing out. I think Carson Beck is going to get an opportunity to play early on in the season, and then we'll kind of get a sense on what the Cardinals think, depending on what their record is, and obviously, how well he plays. But it's not like he'd be stepping into a situation offensively where, he doesn't have the weapons around him. I think the offensive line is in question, and obviously we'll see how the defense is, but the skill position players are there, for him to be successful. So,
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I was hoping, like you kind of said what you said, and maybe we're going to be overreacting to some listeners. I would love to see Carson Beck within the first 4 weeks. I think you get to a certain point with some of these rookie quarterbacks. Kind of felt the same way with the Giants last year, although it's a very different situation where you have these veterans in place, but like we know what these veterans are. We know you're not winning anything with Jacoby Brissett, and at the same time, Carson Beck is in a position where, hey, listen, it isn't the best situation you would want to be in out of every single team in the NFL of all 32 teams, but it isn't a situation where it's like, hey, like he's throwing the situation. It's so bad. He has no chance to ever succeed in it. Like you said, the skill positions are great. And like I said, I feel like it's a perfect pairing because how we just emphasize his college football resume is so long. He's going to be more NFL ready than somebody who hasn't played the amount that he did in the pro offenses and everything. So I think, again, to really get a good hard look at this guy, and also at the same time, with these skill positions that the Cardinals have, if Carson Beck turns out to be what we once thought he could be, maybe this team does have a shot to be a solid team this year. Again, the team isn't that bad for a lot of these teams. We talk about it. They're just missing the most important position. But if Carson Beck comes in, has a great rookie year, maybe they'll be a lot better than people think. And then you really find out that you have your guy in this offense and whatever. And like I said, he's a 6'4" quarterback. He could throw all over the field. He showed his ability this year to run a lot more than he ever has. So he has the skill set. It's just being more consistent, obviously, within the numbers. But I think, again, Cardinals are in a very, I don't even want to say difficult situation because it seems like me and you are on the same page. Like, it really isn't that difficult at all. These veteran quarterbacks should not be starting a lengthy amount throughout the season. So
yeah, no, I do agree with that because again, what are you doing with Jacoby Brissett? And again, you have this quarterback class next year that you could be looking towards if it doesn't work out with Carson Beck. So you kind of want to get a sense of what you have with him now. So then then you have to make that decision with the draft next year. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And like I said, he could even win the job out of camp. If they feel like he's ready. I mean, we saw it with. I mean, remember when the Seahawks threw a lot of money at Matt Flynn, and they drafted Russell Wilson, and then Russell Wilson won the job out of camp. I mean, that's just one example of many examples you could use, but that's just one I think of that comes to mind. Russell Wilson started from day one. So it could be the same thing with Carson Beck too.
I think it's 100% possible. I think, again, you're not looking at a traditional third round pick when you talk about the hype and everything around him in college football and the experiences that he went to. I mean, we were talking about 2-3 years ago him possibly coming out in the Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels draft class of being a top pick there. Like with those guys that came out, he was arguably the best quarterback in college football because that's how great his season was for arguably the best team in college football that year. So again, you're talking about a guy that's just been like so looked at over these last years. It just doesn't feel like a traditional guy that you would draft in the third round, like to me.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Any other